One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That darkness has a name. Jung called it the shadow, and one of its clearest fingerprints is addiction. Addiction rarely starts as addiction. It starts as comfort. Somewhere along the way, often in childhood, long before we had the language to name what we were feeling, an emotion became too much to hold. Fear, shame, abandonment. And because a child has no framework to process something that large, it doesn't get resolved. It gets buried, pushed beneath conscious awareness, into the shadow. But it doesn't stay buried quietly. It becomes the lens. It starts shaping how we see ourselves and how we see the world around us. All of this happens unconsciously. We don't choose the lens. We just look through it. So when something comes along that finally soothes it, a substance, a behavior, a distraction, anything that turns the volume down, it feels less like a choice and more like relief. And for a while, it works. But repression was never transformation. The feeling wasn't resolved. It was avoided. And avoidance only works if it's repeated. This is where it stops being purely psychological and becomes structural. Every time we return to that same relief, the brain reinforces the pathway that leads us there. Neurons that fire together, wiring together, again and again. What began as an unconscious emotional pattern becomes a physical groove carved into the brain itself, an actual, measurable change in how the mind is wired to seek comfort. And that's why willpower alone so rarely works. You're not fighting a bad habit. You're fighting a structure built by the mind to protect a child who once had no other way to survive an unbearable feeling. The shadow doesn't disappear because we refuse to look at it. It waits in the unconscious and eventually in the very architecture of the brain until we're finally willing to feel what we were never allowed to feel. Not to relive it, but to finally let it move through us. Instead of running our lives from beneath the surface,